Captain, Kirishima says, loud enough to cut through Bakugou's daze. He holds his hand over his eye from where Bakugou accidentally punched him in his frenzy to do whatever it is he was trying to do, half asleep. Bakugou looks to him, eyes on the verge of something terrible. Kirishima knows something's wrong, but Bakugou cuts short his thoughts.
Get out.
What?
Get out.
Captain,
Get out.
Bakugou near roars.
Fucking sleep somewhere else.
Kirishima looks at him, bewildered. His stomach flip-flops and his cheeks feel hot with the sudden threat of tears. What do you mean? What's wrong?
Stop arguing with me.
Bakugou shouts.
Get your ass out of my fucking room.
Kirishima stares at him, angry and confused. He's still sleep-dizzy, trying to let Bakugou's words sink into his brain. What did he do?
That's an order, Kirishima.
Bakugou says, his voice cool. He sounds terrifying, and looks it ever more so. The way the dark circles beneath his eyes make him look gaunt and ghost-like. His eyes, though, are the most chilling. Kirishima can't read him at all. Kirishima feels his lip curl up in irritation. Fine. You're being ridiculous, Bakugou.
That's Captain,
Bakugou says, sneering.
Need I remind you of your fucking place?
Kirishima feels like he's feeling too much at once, and it's making him numb. He hears Bakugou's words, and they settle within him, deep and sore, but he can't make sense of him. Was he still dreaming? Either way, Kirishima puts on a pair of pants and storms out of the quarters, perhaps slamming the door too hard, as he hears something fall inside the room. He had barely slept for a couple of hours, judging by the still darkness of the sky. He wants to shout and scream, but he thinks he'd wake the crew, and he'd rather not have the rest of them involved in whatever argument Bakugou is so keen on starting. Kiri? Mina asks, dipping her head over the railing of the top deck. Kirishima looks up at her. He's not in the mood to talk, but he acknowledges her anyway. Mind if I sleep in your bunk? Kirishima asks. She sighs and nods. I'll explain in the morning. Kirishima would rather be with her than be exiled to the rest of the crew. It was degrading, having Bakugou kick him out of his room. Kirishima knows he's been pinting up something for a while, what with his bitter attitude surfacing more and more, but he can't for the life of him figure out why Bakugou won't talk to him about it. He lies onto Mina's bunk and faces the wall. When she comes in, he pretends to be asleep, though he knows she knows better. He hears her sigh and listens to her get ready for bed, the sound of her brushing her hair and washing her face calming his nerves and helping him relax. Her weight next to his in her bunk is foreign compared to Bakugou's, but he appreciates her soft sigh and a kiss to his temple, and murmurs his thanks before he falls asleep. Whoa, Mina says when she sees him in the morning at breakfast. Kirishima woke early, unable to really rest. He climbed over her and started his day numb. Kirishima laughs a little, pressing his fingers into the bruise over his eye. Nightmare got a little out of hand. Maybe the stone is cursed? Mina asks. Kirishima shrugs. He was fine for a bit, though. I think it's useless. Fucking. Mina, he kicked me out. What the hell is that? Mina shakes her head, annoyed. She's about to speak when Bakugou storms into the kitchen, slamming his palm onto the table in front of Kirishima. Kirishima looks up at him, stone-faced. Bakugou was so childish when he was angry. There seemed to be no reasoning with him.
What the fuck is this?
Bakugou says. He lifts his hand and slams his fist onto the table, making the smooth black stone he placed there jump and rattle around.
Did you fucking get this from that damn witch?
Captain.
Not fucking talking to you,
Bakugou says, not looking at her. Kirishima watches as the crew idling around in the kitchen start to leave, Sato included. It was supposed to help with your nightmares, Kirishima says. I was just trying to help.
You think I need help?
Bakugou cackles and Kirishima nods. Yeah, you do. What the hell was that, huh? Kirishima stands up, his own palms flat on the table as he glares at the captain. You can't just toss me out like that. That's uncalled for. I'm not. Bakugou breathes in shakily, his fingers barely contained as he interrupts him.
Your failed ransom.
I'm not your toy, Bakugou. Kirishima shouts at him. Even if Bakugou's words are just said in anger, whatever the cause, they still hurt.
If you don't fucking like it, then you can fucking leave.
Bakugou shouts back. Kirishima is awake enough now that the words do more than sting. They cut through his soft heart, making him feel suddenly ill. He doesn't mean it when he says it, but the idea becomes more and more appealing. Maybe I will. Kiri, Mina says, but he's already stepping up from the kitchen to go onto the deck. He tunes out Bakugou as he comes up behind him, shouting orders to move on to the nearest port. But he pauses when Monoma jumps around in front of him, on top of one of the barrels. Do you see? Monoma shouts, and the attention of the crew shifts from Bakugou's shouting to Monoma's sudden interruption. How easily swayed this captain is? Monoma. Kirishima hears Mina start, but Monoma quickly cuts her off. How long have some of us now been waiting to find this glorious treasure of his? Monoma asks, flourishing his hands as he talks. He jumps off the barrel and strides to Kirishima, who looks on, uncertain of what to do, really thinking this isn't the time. Too long. And yet still he dallies, finding himself a pretty noble whore to waste his time with. And now that he's bored of yet another, our course is running off track. This kind of leadership is subpar. Kirishima watches him in disbelief. He was really... What do you say? Monoma asks, addressing the crew with confidence Kirishima is certain he shouldn't have. Mutiny? There's a beat of silence, then Bakugou laughs. His cackling voice rings in Kirishima's ears, giving him chills. If there was ever a time for mutiny, now may possibly be the worst. Kirishima turns as Bakugou saunters up to Monoma as he continues to make his speech. Forced to tag along as this so-called captain finds his next cheap fuck, leading us into months of avoiding government ships who may find the knowledge of our precious Kirishima. It's pathetic. Kirishima notes that the crew is on edge, the newer members of the crew hanging back, following the silence of the permanent ones as the route to follow. Bakugou sniffs and rolls his shoulders. It happens so fast, Kirishima nearly misses it. His hand whips up forward to grab Monoma's face hard, pushing his head back to crack against the barrel beneath him. Kirishima winces at the sound of his skull bashing against it, and turns away from the gruesome sight. Bakugou shakes the blood from his hand like it's an inconvenience, and Monoma groans on the ground, holding his head before losing consciousness. Bakugou spits onto the deck.
Someone fucking clean this mess up,
he says.
Kick him at the next port. We're gonna drop off the fucking Kirishima too.
Kirishima lowers his head when the crew's eyes turn to him, shocked. Shocked. They won't disobey their captain's decision, especially not after his violent display of authority. But Kirishima can feel their confusion alongside his own. He knows there's a port nearby, less than a couple hours. He looked at the map. He heads into Bakugou's quarters to take his belongings. He hasn't many. He'd shared Bakugou's for the most part. He finds his red silk shirt, the one he wore the day he met him. He unties his hair and drops the pretty fabric onto the bed. He leaves his sword, too. On the deck, he hears Mina arguing with Bakugou, but over the wind and the gulls as they approach the harbor, he can't pick out the words. He doesn't turn around when he hears Mina's footsteps run up behind him. Kiri, she says, breathless. She's been crying. He feels bad. It's okay, Mina, Kirishima says. He feels heavy, confused. His heart aches within him, and it drags his smile low. I said I was leaving. He's not being fair, Mina says, pointing to the upper deck where Bakugou steers the ship. You don't want to leave. I know you don't. Mina, Kirishima says gently, If he doesn't want me here, then there's no way for me to stay. Thank you for being so kind to me. You reminded me a lot of home. I think I'd be a lot worse off if you weren't around." She presses her lips together against her crying and throws her arms around him fast, and Kirishima hugs her back until they stumble a little as the boat bumps against the wharf. When Kirishima pulls back, his face is wet too. He ignores everyone as much as he can. Bakugou could tell him whatever lies he wanted. He's sure his friends aboard will know there's something deeper. Sero lowers the gangplank and nods to him, unhappy but following orders. Kirishima understands. He wants to be strong. He wants to leave with his head held high, and not feel his chest ripping open at every step he takes further away from Bakugou. He can't help it. He turns to look at him, to take in his raw command, his stance wide and proud, arms folded and chin up high. He always looks like a king. Kirishima still wants to say it. There's so much inside him that needs to get out. He has so many problems and questions and arguments and so much anger. But all he can do is set his jaw and walk down into this unknown land with only his name to guide him towards new life or death. Bakugou didn't see himself as being unreasonable. He only saw himself as being right. When Kirishima's feet touch the wharf, he wants to crumple into it, but he opts instead to move away from the busy dock, and as far away as possible from the ship where he's left his heart.